Greetings and salutations, guys. Here's my review of The Last of Us, Season 2, Episode 6. Once more, a reminder of my background with Last of Us, which is I played the first game, watched the first season of the show, but have not played the second game that this season is based on. So this is mostly new stuff to me. And yeah, this was an interesting curveball here as far as an all-flashback episode. I mentioned last week that when Joel died at the beginning of the season, they made it clearer doing press we would see more of Pedro Pascal, that there were flashbacks. But it turns out, I mean, this was all him. I don't even know if he'll be in the finale, and I think maybe he wouldn't, given this episode, but who knows. But yeah, he was back in the opening credits, and he was in almost every scene. In fact, he was in this episode way more than he was in the first two when Joel was still alive. So that was just kind of a funny dynamic, the way that worked. But yeah, it was cool to obviously get this very Joel and Ellie centric episode here. Neil Druckmann co-wrote and directed this episode. That felt very appropriate given he co-created the games and these are his characters. And yeah, I really liked this episode. Part of the time I was wondering, well, does this have to be an all flashback episode? Could they have gone back and forth and maybe move the story forward in the present as well? Now, I realize on one hand, you know, they're splitting the game into at least 2 seasons of the show, so they kind of maybe want to fill more time. But on the other hand, it's just kind of great to have more time with Joel, right? If you can get Pedro Pascal for an entire episode, I think you take it. And it was great to have him back and to see that sort of core dynamic between them. And it hangs over the entire show, and I'm sure it will for the rest of the show, whether he's ever appears again or not. So loved having so much of him on screen, and of course giving us all this context on what exactly was happening with Ellie and him. And how much did she know? When did she know it? She revealed at the end of the last episode she was already aware of what he did, but was that just intuitive, or was it that he told her? It turns out it was both. It was that she'd pretty much figured it out, but she needed him to actually say it. The way we got there, though, I did like how, jumping ahead a year, most of the time, we jumped ahead 2 years at one point, through each of her birthdays and kind of seeing how their lives were growing together in this town, and her going through very pivotal years as a teenage girl from 15 to 19, and, the push and pull between them, and some of it's just, part of life with a teenager, and that, when he walks in and she's getting a tattoo and smoking pot and making out with a girl, and him having to kind of deal with that as sort of a dad processing all that versus the stuff that they are in the apocalypse. And of course, everything that happened with her and her immunity. I thought Neil Druckmann did a really good job directing this episode. It's a very pretty episode visually. There's some moments like the close-ups when Joel is fixing the guitar for her. I loved how that was shot. The moments where Joel and her were kind of crossing the creek together looked great. The stuff when they went into the museum, it was very lovely. It's very sort of poetic. We're seeing some of their best moments together. Some very happy moments. Of course, it's not going to stay happy because this is The Last of Us. Which brings me to the great Joe Pantoliano as Eugene, Gail's ill-fated late husband. We knew that Joey Pants was going to be playing this part going into the season, and I figured, he'll be appearing in a few flashbacks or maybe a huge flashback episode. Well, it was a big flashback episode, but he's only in a few minutes of the show, which is fascinating, but really kind of shows you the strength of a great actor. Because, yeah, he's only basically in 2 scenes. They discover him, he reveals he was bit, and then Joel leads him out to kill him. But it has a lot of weight. And his performance, was very emotional. And, him saying that how important it was for him to, hear her again, to hear Gail again, to see Gail again, and knowing that's not going to happen. He was wonderful, I thought, conveying so much emotion in such little screen time. It was a very powerful moment. And, of course, shows you Joel, sort of his cutthroat nature. I mean, he is doing it for the greater good of the town, and we understand that this is their protocol. But, yeah, him just lying to Ellie's face straight up, when she, makes him promise that he's not going to do what he does, and he does it. And, of course, that being the turning point for her, just realizing, okay, this has happened before, that this man has looked me in the eye and sworn something to me, and now I have proof. Absolute proof that he can be lying to me because he just did it, and why that caused this huge rift between them. I like that as kind of that crucial moment. What caused their uneasiness as the season began was what happened with Eugene and how Joel chose to handle that. But we really hone in here on Joel as a parent, and it's not subtle, but I think it is effective as far as him talking to her about what it means, to love her the way he does, has a father, has a parent. Of course, looming over all this is the fact that he had another daughter that he lost. So why she is extra meaningful to him, I'm glad they didn't have him say it. He didn't need to say it. We know that. Now, of course, this is going to echo in both the past and future because we know that Ellie in the present of the show, learning Dina is pregnant, is so quickly like, I'm going to be a dad, like wants to embrace that, this parenthood. And now it makes even more sense given what happened with Joel. It would always make sense, but now understanding, the conversations they had so soon before his death. But then, of course, you go back to the opening of the episode and seeing that flashback to Joel and Tommy as kids. Another great guest appearance here by Tony Dalton in just one scene, playing their dad, and how he is abusive and he beats them. But then we learn that he was abused himself, even worse, and sort of the messed up nature of that he can talk about that and how damaging that was, and how feel that it's okay in a weird way that he doesn't hurt his kids as bad as his dad hurt him. And we know Joel never was physically abusive with his daughter or with Ellie, but clearly he has this harshness to him. So this sort of channels that in a different way. And I really like that. I really like sort of this sort of character overview we're getting here. Again, Joel is no longer alive in this show, but he is such an important part of it. And the way he raised Ellie for many years of her life, of course, is going to be so, crucial for her as a character. So it makes sense, I think. It doesn't feel like, oh, why are we learning this now? He's dead. It doesn't matter. It completely matters because Ellie is the lead of this show now. And she is kind of carrying on what she took from Joel. And then, we get that big scene with them at the end where we see, yes, they did talk one more time. And I was just, first of all, I was just glad to see it, right? It gave me relief, that it wasn't that they ended things as harsh as they could be. Because her final words to him of like, I don't know if I can ever forgive you, but I'm going to try. That is very sort of sweet, sad melancholy, because that means, he died knowing they hadn't worked things out, but that she was open to it. She wanted to, and how meaningful that was. But before that, what a scene. I thought so well acted, the emotion between these two, between Joel and Ellie, has the weight of what he did, that he doomed humanity, and that, her calling him selfish and him sort of trying to explain himself, I thought was so well acted by Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. It is such a big scene for these two characters, and it's so sort of hard to watch because we love these two characters, and I think we can see both the perspectives. And Joel is being selfish because, yes, he might, have that parental love for her, but dude, you doomed all of humanity potentially by this choice. You certainly didn't help save them. That would be a lot for Ellie to have to process, and we completely get that. But yeah, I think that seeing that they had that moment made me really happy as a sort of viewer, and just feel like, okay, it even more sort of channels where Ellie's at right now. And of course, no matter what, she was going to want this revenge for Joel. But yeah, she had this moment where he kind of laid it all out for her, and, just spoke so from the heart and talked about his love for her. And this was just right before he was going to die. So we understand that she would be laser focused on Abby even more than if he had, if he'd been killed, a year before that. It always would have set her on this revenge course, but maybe even now more than ever. Maybe it's even the sort of the burden of realizing this man, might have doomed all of humanity because of his love for me. So the least I could do is go kill this girl who killed him. But of course, this isn't a great cycle for anyone. And now she is in big trouble where she is. But who knows? We see that one quick little glimpse of her back in sort of the present in Seattle, after she's left the hospital, looking more determined than ever and on the warpath more than ever. So there's still a lot of obstacles in Seattle, but we kind of see, she is freaking driven. I am curious, though, going into the next week. It's the season finale, and I hope that they figured out a way to make it feel like a big proper finale, knowing that this is not the end of the game and that there's plenty more. Again, I don't know story point wise. I don't have any specifics because I haven't played that game. But I do hope they figured out a way where it feels like something important happened, that it's the right time to end it, rather than it just kind of being like, okay, we'll be back in a year or two. That is my fear whenever they split stories, is can they feel like it's an actual ending of a season versus kind of just trailing off. But yeah, I really like this episode. It's, look, Pedro Pascal, the more Pedro, the better. Not that the guy is lacking for work, but I love him on this show, love him as Joel. So it was great to get him in this episode again in such a huge way. So those are my thoughts on episode 6. If you can if you can subscribe, that'd be great. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you for the finale.